Some random thoughts about, well, my dad. The older I get, the more I am grateful that I had both my parents were good parents. Of course, everybody has problems, and they had their problems, and it wasn't always so great. But overall, my dad was an independent man, but not driven by acquiring money or possessions. And he spent a huge amount of time with me. Well, backing up, he had a little household maintenance business, just a one-man operation, where he'd advertise word of mouth or put up some cards in the neighborhood, and people would call him up, and he'd go over and clean windows, floors, carpets. Just old school. He had I remember he had a buffer, small buffer, and I can still see him. I'd look out the window. I lived in the Village Green, beautiful spot, and there'd be Dad striding over to another job, carrying in his hand, he might have the buffer and a bucket in the other hand. I remember he said he used TSP and ammonia, that was his thing, and he used cut-up sheets and for windows, and he'd just go up. I can still see him sitting on a window ledge on the second story, cleaning the casement window, open it up, lean out, and use a little the solution, and then wipe it clean. No squeegee, none of that. Just wipe it clean with the cut-up sheets, and get a real nice clean window. Let's see. Oh yeah, but he spent a lot of time with me. It was kind of like maybe a big brother or something. He seemed to, I think he wasn't so much doing it for my benefit. I just think he liked messing around with his kid, because I remember the earliest memories was Tinker Toys, and I was, maybe 2, 3 years old. And he was like a wizard, putting things together. And I could barely make a little thing with wheels and little square boxes. I didn't have a natural aptitude for it. But I remember once he built a windmill, and I still just thought it was so marvelous. It had these you put these little blue cards in there that would catch the wind, or you could blow on it, and it would actually whirl around. So, and then as I got older, we'd play baseball. He was often home by 3 o'clock. We'd go out on the green and just throw the ball around, and sometimes we'd camp in the backyard, little patio, and he'd talk about the stars. And it was, nobody'd been to the moon yet. It was all marvelous, and he wasn't interested in examining it. And he wasn't a religious fanatic by any means. He never preached to anyone, but he did have a belief in God, and it helped him overcome his alcoholism. And he had almost 50 years of sobriety when he died in 2002, November 7. And I remember him, we'd be driving around and say, I see God everywhere. He's in the trees. And he just saw beauty and God together as a creation of God, which he didn't really define beyond that. And I've been an agnostic and still am, but I do pray. How can it hurt to think about people? And I often am just so grateful, and I imagine, or I would like to believe maybe they hear. I don't know. I'm not convinced of that by any means, but it's therapeutic for me to do that, and I could almost cry when I do it and think about it and be so grateful. So grateful. Dad is a good dad. He lived with me up at my ranch. He helped me out when I bought some property in Long Beach. He lived with me there in an apartment. And we had our feuds once in a while, but overall it was just a magnificent father-son relationship that didn't have anything to do with making money. And sometimes it was a little embarrassing, you know, to say what he did for a living. But I always would do that, and then I meet people now who had, you know, dads that made a lot of money and were very successful in many ways, but they oftentimes couldn't share the experience I had of a very attentive, devoted dad. And I've got to say too now, I could speak just as glowingly about my mom, admiringly, but I'll do that later.